Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. In today's episode, we're continuing the coverage of the Emily Noble case. Her husband currently stands on trial. This Ohio man, he is accused of murdering his wife and staging the scene to look like a suicide, and now he is facing life in prison if he is convicted. The severely decomposed remains of Emily Noble, 52 years old when she died, she was discovered hanging from a tree in September of 2020. This was almost 4 months after she was last seen alive. Her husband, defendant Matheau Moore, he was arrested in June of 2021. Prosecutors say that Moore killed his wife sometime between May 24th and May 25th of 2020. He reported Noble missing May 25th. He told police he was asleep when Noble left the home without her car, keys, wallet, or cell phone. In the following months, he posted flyers and pleaded with the producers at the Vanished podcast to highlight his wife's missing persons case. The day before trial would begin, jurors would come to this location where Emily's body was found, which was less than a half a mile from a home she owned in Westerville, Ohio. Jurors would also see the exact spot with the tree where she was at, and they used this golf ball on the screen to share where her body was at. And they would find her with a USB cord around her neck, and this is according to an autopsy report which listed the cause of death as multiple injuries to her head and neck. Moore has pleaded not guilty to 1 count of felony murder, 1 count of purposeful murder, and 1 count of felonious assault. And so the trial began on August 17, 2022. And in this video, I'm going to give you the recap of day 1. Defendant Matheau Moore facing charges, as I mentioned, felony murder, felony assault, and murder. And he's facing a potential sentence of a life in prison. And the location of the incident, Westerville, Ohio. And the date of the incident, again, prosecutors say was somewhere between May 24th through May 25th of 2020. This was during the COVID-19 pandemic. His bond was at $2.5 million. He was married to his wife, Emily Noble, for 2 years. And on May 25th, 2020, he reported her missing. And as I mentioned, he spoke to the Vanished podcast about his missing wife, which people on the podcast would say it was a very strange interview. Emily Noble, only 52 years old at the time of her death, rest in peace, Emily. Her remains were found almost 4 months after her disappearance, and she was found less than half a mile from her home. And police, they say the death was staged to look like suicide. Noble's first husband died by suicide. Matt Moore's son died by suicide by hanging. Her remains were partially skeletonized. They had to use dental records to prove it was her. The coroner, he found trauma to face and neck, along with a black plastic USB cord around her neck. And so on day 1, you had the prosecution's opening statement and you had the defendant's opening statement. You also had Emily Noble's sister, Amy Thomas, on the stand. You had Officer Robert Hollis from the Westerville Police Department on the stand. And you had Emily's best friend, Celeste, on the stand. And so I'm going to share a little bit of what came out of this 8-hour-long day. Day 2 is beginning today at the start of this video. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to follow up on all the highlights of this case. Right now, I will tell you, from what I'm gathering so far, it's still early, but what I'm gathering, the state is going to have their hands filled in proving that he murdered her and made it look like a suicide. Because according to his defense attorney, there is no physical evidence. So again, they will have their hands full in this case. Prosecutor Corey Go, in his opening statement, he shares about Emily Noble's first husband, who died from suicide in 2011. Her parents died 1 year apart in 2015 and 2016. In 2019, tragedy struck Emily Noble once more when the son of Matheau Moore, Joey, committed suicide. She would sought therapy. He shares some of things like that in the opening statement. He shares that everything that the jurors are going to hear over the next 2 weeks of this trial, hearing from her friends, hearing from her family, hearing from her best friend, in what he believes they're going to find there's no way she committed suicide. On the other end, the defense attorney, let me tell you straight up, this girl's a bulldog. You can tell. She's got little snarky faces. She sounds like she's got this ready where the state is going to have a lot of problems proving their side. Right now, I don't know how I feel, guilty or not guilty. I'm hearing a little of both on that are making me have mixed feelings. Some things don't sound right, but sounding and actual, two different things. Even if he did this, right now, it doesn't look like it's a open and shut case. So we're going to be following this trial. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe if you want all the recaps around this trial. And the defense attorney, she says there's no physical evidence whatsoever around him doing this. And then the jurors hear from the prosecutor's first witness. And this is Emily Noble's sister, Amy Thomas. Now, Amy requested that her face would not be shown in court. In Ohio, if there is cameras in trial, you can request that your face is not shown in court. And so she did request that her face not be shown. This picture of Emily was shown in court when they were talking about Emily. And when Amy was called up to the stand, one reporter who was around all the friends, they could hear people whispering to each other how much her sister Amy looked just like Emily. These two were so close. Amy describes her relationship with Emily. She describes Emily as courageous and strong and loved nature. Their ages are so close to each other. Emily was born on May 24th, 1968. 2 days, less than a full year after her older sister Amy. Amy was born on May 26, 1967. Emily was born on May 24th, 1968. Amy said if there was one thing that she loved about their commonality was how close their birthday was. Every year there was a tradition on how they would wish each other happy birthday, because for them their birthdays were a very special time. On May 24th, when Emily would have her birthday, it would be the same age as her sister Amy. And so for 2 days they had the exact same age. When Emily turns 26 years old, Amy is 26 years old. 2 days later, Amy turns 27, and it stays like that for another year. So every year this was very special between the two of them. Until her disappearance, Amy, she didn't realize how much of a social life that Emily had. And she shares this in court. She did not realize how much this girl was loved by so many. Because when she gets the phone call that Emily's missing, we'll dive into that part too. She gets the phone call that Emily's missing. She starts racking her brain. Who am I going to call looking for Emily? She thinks of the first 8 names that come to mind that she's known, that they've all known all their lives, and she starts calling. All of a sudden, she calls those people. Word starts getting out. Then all these people start calling her sister. Like, hey, we hear your sister's gone. We want to help. What can we do? We want to put together searches. That's when she realized, wow, Emily is loved by many. Emily has a big social life. She goes to her Facebook account. She's like, wow, she has 1,000 friends. This girl's loved by many. She didn't realize that until this time. Amy would share that at a young age, Emily was around death. When she first friended someone who she brought over to Amy's house so that Amy could meet him, and he was HIV positive. And HIV turns into AIDS. My mom would die of AIDS. Drugs are a big deal when you do some bad stuff. And so I'm very familiar with having HIV, which would then turn into full-blown AIDS. And so Emily, who has a heart of gold and loves everybody, as her sister describes her, she's courageous, she's strong, she loved nature. She loved people. And her heart would go out to people. And then Amy shared about Emily's first husband, Mark. And she described Emily as happy as could possibly be. These two were cute as a button. They would even dress alike, which Amy described as she found that cute. They were so close with each other. And then when asked how Mark would die and when, she shared that Mark died by suicide in 2011. Their dad, Lester, died in his yard in 2015. From this fall, he would have surgery and then he would later die from complications from that surgery. So this was really hard on Emily and Amy. After the death, their mom sells the home and buys a condo in Westerville, Ohio. And then less than a year after their dad Lester died, their mom died in a car accident in 2016. And she was coming to Southeast Ohio from Delaware. She was planning to meet some friends, which also included Emily. And when Emily's mom didn't show up, she started getting concerned, and then she goes to the police department and says, "My mom was supposed to come and meet us and I've not seen her. Can you please help find her?" Unbeknownst to Emily at the time, there was a car accident and they couldn't identify the person that was in there until this. Then they find out that your mom was in an accident. We didn't know that was your mom. We couldn't identify her at that time. And so Emily took this really hard. Amy shared their mom, she loved all three kids. There were three kids. She loved all three kids. But Emily and mom had a very special relationship. And when their mom died, Emily was the executor of the estate. She would leave the condo to the three kids. Emily bought it from the two kids. They agreed on something. And so she buys the condo. She moves into the condo. She still has her apartment. And Amy shares that she was coming home for Christmas. And her mom calls her. This would be before the accident. And she says she's really excited about someone she's going to meet. Mom was really excited. Matt, being from Las Vegas, meets Emily. Mom says she really liked Matt and was excited for Amy to meet him. So at first, Matt would be living at his father's place, and then he would later move into Emily's apartment with his son, Joey. And so they would live in Emily's apartment because until everything was settled with the executor state, and until it was officially Emily's condo, they just thought it would be best, because we don't really know Matt yet, don't let him move into the condo until all of this stuff is settled. Later on, everything is settled, Matt moves into the condo with Joey. On May 24th of 2020, this would be Emily's birthday. And so Amy, she texts Emily that morning of her birthday, really excited, wishing her a happy birthday, and her response on that text was 52 and fabulous. Like she was excited and she was enjoying it. And so she shares that the last time she heard from Emily was on her birthday when they're doing their usual wishing each other happy birthday. Today, they're the same age. In 2 days, Amy's older again. And throughout the day, she's wondering why she hasn't heard from Emily. It's her birthday. They must have big plans. I'm wondering why I don't hear from Emily. So later on, she says about maybe 3 or 4 o'clock, she still hasn't heard from her. So she goes to Facebook and see what's going on over there. Like, hopefully there's some signs that you're having a great day on your birthday. She sees this image on Facebook. She doesn't quite remember who posted it, but she sees it. She loves it. This was the day of her birthday, and this was the picture that was taken at Field of Heroes. And so she's excited. She thinks they're having an amazing day. She loves this picture. Amy reaches out in a group Facebook Messenger with both of them. It's a group message, the three of them. She's excited. She's like, it looks like you're having a great day. I love this picture. And she makes a comment. She shares on the stand that she could see that both of their phones had seen her reply. They had seen where she said She loves them. She loves this picture. She's so happy for them. They look so great. You know, she's not suspecting anything. She had no inclination that something is wrong or anything. And so she says she knows that she's seen it. If you can see on this messenger, underneath it, I put these little symbol. This is a little symbol that says you've seen this message. It lets people know that they saw the message that you commented. And so she said that I could tell they both saw my Facebook Messenger. At least both phones showed that her messages had been seen by both of them. But again, the last time she hears from her is the morning of her birthday when she sends her a text, 52 and fabulous. On Monday, May 25th, a day after Emily's birthday, a day before Amy's birthday. And they always have this conversation about being the same age. Her phone is ringing Monday night, May 25th, and she sees it's from Emily's phone. She gets excited, picks up the phone, and she automatically answers, "We're the same age today. How are you, Emily?" Then there's a pause. On the other line, she hears, "Amy, this is Matt. I'm so sorry. Emily is gone." And so Amy's like, "What do you mean she's gone? What are you guys fighting about this time? What did you do, or what did she do?" She's just like asking questions. And basically, he's just responding with statements. She's gone. She nowhere to be found. Like, no, he's not actually answering her questions. He's just following up replies with statements. May 26th. People are trying to put together a search party to look for her. And so they're messaging with each other. I believe it's a messenger messages that they're replying to each other about this search. And she asks him, "Are you going to go and search?" And he says something pretty weird. He says to her, he didn't want to go out and look to find her dead under a tree somewhere. That is not what search parties are for. And he said he wanted to just let the police search for her. That's a weird statement. And, she shares that for the longest time, she enjoyed Matt. She thought Matt was nice, polite, well-spoken, and kind. But again, she wasn't really around them. I think she was there like twice. She was around all of them, just maybe like 2 different times. So she wasn't around them quite a bit. She didn't really come even for the search party because it was during COVID. They were under quarantine. And she was in between jobs. She didn't have a job, so she didn't have money to stay at a hotel. So she didn't know where she would stay. So she didn't really assist in the search for him. So they were close, but she was in Alexandria, Virginia, where she spent most of her life after college in Ohio. She pretty much spent the rest of her life in Alexandria, Virginia. She referred to him because she already had a brother. She referred to him, my more noble brother, playing off of the Moore and Noble name. There was a play on for that. So that's how she referred to him. And the sister says that their relationship changed after the disappearance. He was asking her to take on roles that she was not willing to take on. For example, in the second week of June, while she's still a missing person, he calls her and he says, "I've appointed you as my spokesperson to the media. So if the media has questions, I want them to talk to you." She's like, "No, I'm not doing that." And then a couple days later, he calls her again and he says, "I've decided I want you to be my spokesperson to the police." She's like, "Absolutely not. I'm not doing that. You need to be talking to the police. I'm already talking to the police. You need to be talking to police." She sent the detective emails often. Anytime she got any type of clue or anything that came to her, she emailed the detective that was involved. So his actions at this time are a little odd. Then, in a menacing tone during that conversation, he says, "You need to think long and hard about whether you ever want to see your sister again." What does that mean? After that, they had no more phone conversation. They would have a couple text messages. And then later, he sends her a message threatening her family with defamation, like lawsuits, because he's saying that there's a lot of online negative stuff pointing towards him and people saying things. And she's like, Well, let me see the screenshots. Let me see the proof. If it has anything to do with my side of the family, with my family or my friends, I will definitely talk to them. He didn't provide any proof or any screenshots or anything that showed her family bashing him or saying he had something to do with it. And then another text at another time, he says to her, I miss our talks. And Amy replies, I miss my sister. I love that. He says to her, can't you call me? She says, no, call Detective Grubbs. And she gives him Detective Grubbs' phone number. And that was the first witness, Amy Thomas, her sister. Officer Robert Hollis of the Westerville Police Department, he was up on the stand next. And he shared that he responded to a missing persons report on May 25th of 2020. And he shares a little of the encounter.
This her? That's your wife? Oh, okay. Okay. Now, Officer Hollis. Hello.
Hi.
Celeste. Okay, so what's going on?
She's uncharacteristically missing.
Okay.
Her wallet's here. Here's her wallet. I need some money. Her phone is here. Car's in the garage. I've been up since 10, probably.
10 a.m. today?
Probably guessing about that time. A little bit later than I usually sleep, and she just hasn't been here. I sleep in this room. I get up in the middle of the night sometimes to go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't go back into the bathroom. So I go in this second bathroom. When I got up this morning, all I did was look on my phone, find my phone, and it said she was here. So I got up this morning. I figured she was in the other room. Eventually I got up, I walked around. She wasn't here.
What made you lost me a little bit? You said you got up, went to the restroom, and you went back to this room?
Yeah.
And then you looked on your phone to see if she was here?
This morning, last night,
Okay.
My prostate.
No.
I get up, I wake her up, I just fall asleep in this house.
Did you go to sleep with her?
Prior to that,
Okay. Did you call her?
I called, she's her best friend, and I just called her, waiting around all day for her to show up. I called her.
Officer also asks them, because he says they went to celebrate the birthday, he asks him, was she drunk? How much has she been drinking? Were you drunk? And hear his response on that.
She went for a while.
How intoxicated do you think she was when you were at home? I mean, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. You know, is she...
She does get drunk, but she wasn't, I've seen her way worse. I mean, she wasn't slurring.
She wasn't slurring. Were you more intoxicated than she was yesterday? You don't think so? Okay. Got to check it off. All right, thanks.
The officer also does a walkthrough of the home where you just saw, where he finds the cars in the garage, but then he also has him do a walk around the home.
She put a straight and told her like that. That to me means that we were in here, maybe she's on top, or no, it's not normal. When she goes to make a bed,
Well, you said you were sleeping in the bed last night, right?
and we were drinking, and I'm not, it's foggy, but I remember getting up, okay,
Uh-huh.
and I looked right at the clock, so I always kind of figure out.
Right.
And on my phone, but I do this.
Uh-huh.
They like text the friend. So I was the other times like I probably fell back asleep about 5, and that's why I tried to.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you turn that on? Also, she was last for the pop.
The phone kind of got a timeline. There's really nothing that she.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does this open? Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, okay.
Officer Robert Hollis of the Westerville Police Department, he is the one that responded to a missing person report on May 25th, 2020. And he recorded body cam video interaction with Matheau Moore. And you'll see some of these clips just like this, where he is sharing what he experienced. And Mr. Officer Hollis, he conducted a walkthrough of the couple's home and observed their cars were there. Her best friend, Celeste Grone, she visited Emily on May 22nd, 2020 at Emily and Matt's condo. So Celeste, Emily, they walked the neighborhood to forage food. Now, forage food, this is where you search widely for food or provisions. She last heard from Emily on May 24th at 6 p.m. And she shared that she came to the condo after Matt called to say Emily was missing, and she came over to help search for her. And you saw her on the body cam when the police pulled up, and at first Officer Hollis asked, "Is that her?" And Matt says, "No, but it looks like her, huh?" And she was just over there because she was concerned about her best friend who has been missing. My friends, you have been caught up on day one's recap of the staged suicide murder trial versus husband Matheau Moore. Rest in peace, Emily Noble. My friends, I'll be back with day two's recap, so make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're following this case. Thank you so much for joining and have a great day. Peace.